Hi, nice to meet you, everyone. Yes, I'm Emma Fell. At Digital, we are a digital and social media marketing agency. We work just in the education sector and almost exclusively with independent schools in the UK and overseas. So yes, I want to talk to you today about social media for schools. I'm going to give you some of my top tips and how you can implement them, some tricks on how you can implement them in a more easily understandable way, and we'll have some content ideas along the way as well. So obviously social media and social media marketing kind of ubiquitous, and they are really important for schools at the moment. There always seems to be a changing landscape though. You know, there are always different platforms to try. There are always different changes within the platform. So it can get really quite overwhelming at times. And it can also be easy to get carried away with thinking, oh, do we need to jump on that platform, or which ones do we need to be doing? There's a lot of uncertainty around it. I know that for sure. It's conversations I have with my clients initially to start with as well. So we have a very particular sector, a very particular product. And so there's always work to be done on how we can make social media platforms really work for schools. You know, it's very different from e-commerce, lots of different digital landscapes out there. So to start with, I just want to go really back to basics, take you right back to basics with me. So, oh, this will work. So what is social media? Social media are quite simply a collection of platforms that enable people to connect, interact, and share information online. The reason I wanted to go right back to this to start with is because I want you to think of this definition in your mind as we go through the tips, because it's really fundamental. So it doesn't matter if you're talking about a messaging social platform, a visual only, video only, static and visual, audio, whatever it is, all social media platforms are built around this same idea of community and connection. So this is really key when we're thinking about our marketing efforts on these platforms. So we'll just dive straight into the good stuff that you're here for today. So these are my 5, hopefully simple tips for success for you on your school's social media. So the first one is kind of a bit of an age-old one. It comes through, it's the same with digital and traditional and social media marketing, is to know your audience. Who are they? And as schools, you'll have multiple. So that's what makes this process of social media marketing a bit more difficult, feels a bit more a bit less straightforward for us to navigate, is because we do simply have a lot of audiences that we need to service. So where are your audience online? By where, I mean, are they mostly on Instagram? Are they mostly on Facebook, Twitter? Do they use a combination of platforms? What do they use those different platforms for? And at which point during their decision-making process and in their customer journey to join our school? Here, going back to your traditional idea of buyer personas will really be helpful here. So thinking about your parent demographics, you know, things like what do they do for their job, what are their interests, what are their educational values. There's a lot of strategy work you can do on drilling down into your buyer personas, but simply talking to your parents, talking to admission staff, giving an insight into some of the FAQs they get, that can give you a lot more information about your parents. I would also urge you to go into your insights on the platforms, the ones that you would use the most often, or the ones that you currently have the highest volume of followers on, and you can go into the audience insights in there and have a bit of a look at that, what they can tell you quite simply. We then, once we know our audience, we can make sure we create content that they will value. So it's not content that we want to put out necessarily, it's content that they will find interesting. So within your audiences, you're going to have obviously current parents and students, but importantly, you're going to also have prospective parents and students. Yes, you'll have alumni and lots of other audiences as well. But when I talk to my clients about social media, it's very much through a marketing lens. It's not just a platform that we post a load of photos on. It's very much a marketing tool, and it should be considered as such. So we're going to come at this from the same, with that same idea in mind as we would any other digital marketing channel. So how can we create content that they're going to value and make sure that they're going to be seeing that content online? Because that's the other thing we're up against. It's not necessarily going to be seen by all your followers or everyone that you want to see your content online. So firstly, you want to avoid creating content that is solely or mainly for existing parents and students. This is particularly if you're looking to use social media marketing to increase your admissions pipeline, which I know lots of schools are. Bear this in mind. So current parents, prospective parents, they're going to be interested in what students are doing at the moment at school and their successes and things, but they also need to learn lots more information, such as fees. What are the boarding houses like? What's the ethos of the school? Who's going to be teaching their children? There are so many different ways that we can talk to prospective parents and help them through that, nurture them through that decision-making process and show them how great our school is and why it's going to really marry up with their own educational values and hopes for their child. Follower count in your audience is not the most important. Sure, keep an eye on it. But with schools, there's always a natural ebb and flow of followers. So at the start of the school year or over the summer, you're likely to get a peak of followers as new parents that are joining the school start to follow you. And then at the end of the academic year, you'll have, your leavers, and the students and the parents will tend to drop off. The thing to look out for is that you've got a healthy number of new followers compared to the number of leaving followers. And that will tell you if your content is hitting the mark for the audiences you're wanting to serve. To help you find this audience on these social media channels, on Instagram, which is the one that I work with most with my clients, because it simply gets the best results and it's most appropriate for their particular demographics. Hashtags are going to be really, really key on Instagram as a platform. But don't just go for the hashtags that you think go just simply with the content that you've got. They need to marry up with the content that you're posting as well, but you need to be thinking about the hashtags and search terms your audience will be likely to be using and searching for online. So for example, if you're targeting, let's say, parents with young children so that they can come into your nursery or into your reception, they're going to be looking on things like, how to choose a nursery, or tips for using phonics with their children, those sorts of things. That's the sort of content that's not necessarily directly related to school, but that's the sort of content they're going to be looking at online. So if you can create posts that are going to serve that interest, that value, and then marry that up with hashtags that are going to be relevant to what the parents are searching for and the content you're sharing, then you're onto a winner. Not all the content that your school can put out, and my goodness, schools have so much great content. There's always so much going on, isn't there? But not all of it needs to go on the grid on Instagram. So the grid is the 9, let's say, top images that you'll see. It's the first page that you'll see on a profile. Not all of it needs to go there. Some of it can go on in other formats of content, such as stories is really great for kind of on the day content. This is what's happening now, gives an insight into daily life without clogging up your grid. You can use reels or videos. All videos uploaded on Instagram now are reels. You can also use reels on Facebook. And you can create guides as well. And guides are a collection of posts all in one place so that parents can go and look at, okay, I want to find out lots about the nursery or lots about boarding. And they can go and then binge through that content that you've collated all together in one place to save them having to scroll through all your many posts. So my second tip is really coming back to the very purpose of the social platforms, which is to create community. This really is the key to success, community and engagement. So we want to keep the algorithms and your audiences happy. We don't want to just create content just to tick the box for the algorithm and just get, vanity metrics like follower numbers and reach. We want to make sure that we're providing real value and helpful information to our audiences and creating that community through building relationships online as well. So your different audiences are going to have different values, expectations, desires. They're going to be wanting to see different things from you online, and they're going to want to interact with you in different ways as well. The most important thing here is that you engage with them. So don't leave comments unanswered. Go out and invite comments, ask their opinion, ask them to go to your link in your bio to sign up for something, ask them to participate in a poll on your stories, perhaps, ask them their opinion, what's their favorite boarding house or something, drop it in the comments. Really, this inbound and outbound engagement is key. So This is kind of inbound and outbound, something that I've termed to differentiate between the types of engagement we could and should arguably be doing online. So inbound is going to be where you're answering all of your direct messages or your comments that come in on your posts, really just doing all the housekeeping that comes with managing your social profiles. Your outbound engagement is where you're actively going out and finding different accounts to engage with online. So that could be going through your follower list and engaging with some of their stories in an appropriate way. It could also be interacting with other schools, so tagging them in, congratulating them if they have a specific achievement, or going and finding other parent groups or other accounts where you think your target audience will also be following online and engaging with their content to give your brand and your profile more visibility. Replying, I think I've mentioned already actually, but replying to your messages is really, really key. I always urge caution with setting up on Instagram and Facebook Messenger. Actually, you can set up automated replies. I urge caution when you're doing this because it can feel a bit scary to say, okay, we need to reply quickly, but we can't feasibly, reply instantaneously because we're all at capacity. And, let's face it, we don't all have the luxury of being able to be on social media all the time to reply to these things. I would say if you can aim to reply between 24 and 48 hours after a comment comes in, that's reasonable. Equally, over the weekend, if you leave it from Friday till Monday, I would say that's reasonable. Parents aren't going to be expecting someone at a school to be online over the weekend. So arguably, I'd say auto replies aren't necessarily needed. Also, keep an eye on your engagement rate. So this is the number of engagements. So the likes, shares, follows, over your number of followers and then times by 100. So you want to be aiming for 3 or above, really. Typically, I'll see maybe 2 to start with, and then we'll get it to 5 and 10 on posts, and then 10 plus on stories is going to be good. So what engagement rate tells you is how effectively your content is resonating with your audience, the people that are seeing your content and given the opportunity to interact with your content. So it's so much more than just looking at the number of likes that you get on a post. Sometimes that is a really useful metric to have a look at, but there are lots more metrics as well. Really good way to engage, and really simple way to engage, is to create stories with polls, and there are lots of different engagement stickers on stories. So there's a square with a smiley at the top of the sticker of the stories creation interface, and you can choose polls, and you can say which do you prefer, this one, that one. You can ask them questions to give them more information about your school or ask their opinion, even get to know your audience a little bit more, so that can feed into the first point. So are you a current parent, student, alumni, prospective parent? That can help inform the balance of content that you might want to put on your account after that. But really giving opportunities to engage and interact with your audience is really, really key here. Not only does it build that relationship organically with the people that are following you and engaging with you, but it ticks a big box in all the algorithms to say this content is good for this set of people, which is your prospective parents and your current parents. That will then enable the algorithm to show that content to more of the same types of people. So it will help the platforms help you find more of your target audience. So it really, really is important. My third tip is to be strategic. So a lot of the time I see, we'll fall into the trap, and it's so easily done of quick, we've got to get a post up, or quick, this just happened, we've got to get this out, get it out. And it's a rush. And it can often feel quite stressful and a bit hectic to do that as well. Actually, coming back to the start of what we talked about, so social media being a marketing channel, again, we need to be just as strategic with social media marketing as we are with the rest of our marketing channels. So when we've got that broad digital marketing strategy, how does our social media piece fit within that whole strategy, fit within that whole puzzle? And what particular purpose are we going to be using social media marketing for? Then we need to work out how, within the social media landscape, looking at the platforms we want to use and the tools we've got within them, how are we going to achieve that goal? And that will help you keep your content focused, help you, bat off conversations where I know you're frequently marketers are put under pressure by well-meaning members of staff. Oh, I sent you this content, have you been able to post it? I'd really like to see it. And it can be difficult to manage those conversations, I know, at times, because you don't want to discourage those, really keen and helpful teachers, for example, who are sending you lots of content so that you've got content to share. But equally, you don't want to be spray posting all of everything they send you, but you don't want to, let's say, hurt feelings or damage relationships. So having a strategy to back you up can help, because you can say, actually, yeah, thanks so much for sending that through, but I'm just going to keep it in my back pocket and we'll post it maybe in a few weeks, or we'll do a throwback Thursday or a feature Friday or something on it and post it at a later date. Or maybe you don't post it because actually it doesn't fit with the strategy perhaps, and it can just help those conversations. The most important thing about being strategic is it can really help you get results. It helps you stay focused on your goal. So your strategy is going to be your goal with a plan to achieve that goal in the most simple, the most simple format. So if you've got that goal in mind and your plan to achieve it, it can really help you focus on the exact kind of content that you want to be sharing and creating, therefore, to help you achieve those results. So how could you go about being strategic? First off, quite simply, create a social media strategy. Even if it's a really simple one to begin with, as part of that, you'll then choose your content pillars. So these are simply subject areas or themes that you're going to prioritize talking about on your social media channels. So depending on the frequency at which you are able to keep posting and that you feel is sustainable and appropriate, I'd go with choose maybe 3 to 7 content pillars. These should be subject themes that are not too broad that you lose focus, but not so narrow that you end up posting about the exact same thing week in, week out. So for example, you might want to choose teaching ethos or school brand and history, or maybe sport is a really strong USP for your school. And then when you've got those content pillars that will hopefully or should be in line with your strategy, then it gives you a guidance and a guideline within which to post each week. From there, you can create your content plan. So your content plan is really going to help save your sanity, and it can be aligned to your goals and aligned to your content pillars. So it'll be something as simple as a calendar, say in an Excel doc, or I like to use Airtable as an online tool. It's a fancy Excel basically. And you'll have all your days of the week, you'll plan ahead, and within that you will detail your subjects or your content pillars, let's say above each day of the week, each week. And so you can then start to plan in, okay, on Monday I'm going to talk about our teaching ethos. So one week on Monday you might do about how that came about, or simply what it is if you haven't shared it online before. And then the next week you might do a bit of an interview with a teacher, and they can talk a little bit about that, or how they can talk in a roundabout way about it even. It doesn't have to directly talk about it. Tuesdays, you might choose to talk about boarding, and maybe you've decided actually boarding we need to demystify, because people seem to think that when I had this with a client before, people seem to think when the children are boarding that they're then never allowed home. So you might want to demystify that and show actually these are the ways that we encourage parents to come in, and we have exeats and we have holidays at home, and that's a way you can start to address that within that boarding content pillar. Finally, as part of the strategic thing, a final tip I would say is don't forget to convert. Don't overdo this, but also don't forget it. So a CTA, your call to action, is how you're going to convert people. Converting is just simply getting them to start in one place or state and converting them to the next one. So it could be you're aiming to convert a browser of your content into a follower. So your call to action would be follow us for more information about the school. Then you might be wanting to convert a follower into someone who engages with you, someone who's a lot more invested, let's say. So then your call to action would be along the lines of let us know what you think in the comments. Then you might be wanting to convert that engaged follower into someone who makes an inquiry or signs up to your open day. So your CTA, your call to action, would be along the lines of go to our link in our bio, or click this link to sign up for our next event. And when you're doing that, you're making sure that you're making it really clear for your followers what action you want them to take and exactly where and how they can take that action. And that's really the key, because if we're otherwise doing all this great strategy and content and spending all this time on social media, but then we don't ultimately get the result that we're after, what's the point? My fourth tip is to stay authentic. So authenticity is really, it's again key on social media. So there's a really huge trend, huge increase in the consumption of video online, and particularly in social media at the moment. Every year for the last 3 years, it's been shooting right up. And I know when I talk to clients, it kind of puts fear into them a little bit, because they think, oh gosh, creating a video is such a lot of work and it's such a lot of budget. The thing with social media is, sure, there's definitely a place for those beautifully, professionally created videos, but you don't always need all the kit, and it doesn't need to be always all polished. If you're just putting up a story, it can just be what's happening now. Someone with a school smartphone goes and makes sure they get, obviously, the children who have just got the permissions to be on social media, or they capture a beautiful shot of the grounds, maybe they walk around the school and show some of the lovely facilities and the sports pitches and so on. So you really don't need anything more than a smartphone if that's what if you're wanting to increase your video output online, which I would strongly encourage you to do so. Most of the most widely used social media platforms for schools are visual, or in some part visual, if not predominantly. So Instagram is an example of a predominantly visual platform, but we've also got visual elements on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn to a lesser extent, but it's still there. Of course, we can go live and we can share video and stills and everything. So we want to make sure that our brand image on social media matches our brand image off social media. So there's a little bit of license here, because our school brand may be quite formal, for example, and we wish to stay quite formal. On social media, we can afford to be a little bit less formal, but if your brand is really quite formal, then you wouldn't want to swing completely the opposite way and go into over friendly mode. So you've got a little bit of license to be a little bit more, I suppose, relaxed in tone on social media, but equally I would always encourage you to make sure that you're comfortable with how your brand's tone of voice is conveyed on the platform. Equally, how your visual identity is conveyed on the platform. So this can not only make sure that your social media profiles are really clearly married up with your main branding, your main brand identity, but it can also just make your social media profiles look a lot smarter. For example, if you are, let's say, talking about how modern your outlook is, or your approach to teaching, or your tech is, but then your social media channels are looking a little bit rough around the edges, let's say, that's an example of where your social identity doesn't really marry up with your brand identity and what you want to be known for. So you want to make sure that they're matching and they're really conveying the same message. Equally with your values as well, making sure you're staying true to those on social media. Not just doing things because other schools and other brands are doing them. There are lots of trends all the time on social media, particularly on reels and video and things, but make sure that if you're going to jump on those trends, which you absolutely can, and I encourage that where it's appropriate, make sure that you check in with, okay, is this something that our current parents are going to think is in line with our school values? Is this something that we want prospective parents to see because we want them to know that this is in line with our school's values? And if both of those answers are yes, then great, go for it. So be true to your brand. There's always the underlying feature there. So some ideas of how you can do this tangibly. So simply using your brand colors in your social media. So I'll frequently talk with schools. I know that permissions for using children's images on social media is quite understandably an area of contention and often difficulty with managing different levels of permissions and things. But for me, with clients, I always say, actually, if you use fewer photos with faces, that's arguably better sometimes. So sometimes we need to share, this is what the students are doing, and you need to have faces in them, but not for every single post. We don't need that. Some of the posts is going to be okay if we have a graphic or if we have a shot of the grounds or something. So we can get round the permissions element while still sharing really useful, valuable and beautiful content. So using your brand colors in those graphics can be a great way to do that in a really smart smart way, and it comes across really professionally done. So you can use, if you've got the luxury of being able to use a designer, fantastic. If not, then canva.com can be a really great alternative. You can use, they've got a free plan. And you can upload your brand colors into there so that you can straight away use it into the pre-made, pre-sized formats. You can also upload your brand fonts and things, and you can just copy that over into whatever you're doing as well. So you can make sure that your graphics are always going to be on brand, and they're always going to look quite smart. You can leverage stories as well. So you can use stories to show kind of the in between the grid posts, in between the reels and the posts, to really show your school's personality. Reels can allow you to do that as well in video. You can do this in a way that's slightly less obvious. So through audio usage, the audio that you choose to overlay on your reels and your videos can give the tone of the video, or the tone that's intended. So I know for a school I worked with a couple of years ago, they wanted to really convey this very friendly, approachable, relaxed atmosphere they had in their junior school. And so we went with an audio introducing some members of the team that was kind of, in the client's words, a bit cheesy, but it worked really well because the staff members were really on board with it, and we kind of used it as a bit of fun, and as a really useful, valuable piece of content for prospective parents and current parents. And it really flew in terms of engagement and the school being able to show its personality through that audio. I know from talking to lots of social media managers from schools that sometimes there's a bit of uncertainty around how they can reply to comments and how they should interact with parents online. I think that uncertainty or lack of confidence can be quite worrying if you're the one managing the account. You don't want to reply in the wrong way, or does this represent the school, how I'm conveying this reply, this message? So a way around that can be to agree with a team or your manager a tone of voice guide, so that it gives the social media managers confidence and the freedom to reply. Because as we saw in the engagement section, that's really key. So we want to be replying in some capacity to I'd say almost all of the comments, so all of the genuine comments. So the thing that you might find when you start engaging a bit more online, or in terms of comments, or simply posting a little bit more targeted, is that you might get some spam comments come on. If you have spam comments, I always say to delete them. There's a bit of controversy around that, but for schools I would say delete them, because they don't always look very good to have visible on our feeds, on our posts. But any genuine comments from parents or partners and students, you can just reply with their thanks, or you might decide that actually using an emoji is suitable for your brand. I know some schools I work with love to use the odd emoji that's relevant, and some just really don't think it's on brand for them. So you'll work out what will fit and what will feel right for your school. And that will not only enable your social media manager, whoever manages your social media, to reply to comments, direct messages, but also to go out and do that outbound marketing as well, and really help to grow your brand. And it's when you start to really engage in earnest that you can start to see your reach and your statistics and your account just really take off. My final comment, my final tip, is not to spread yourself too thinly. So again, I am acutely aware, lots of schools, they've got maybe one marketing person, maybe someone who is part-time marketing, part-time admissions, or part-time teaching. Some schools have someone that can solely manage marketing or solely manage social media. whatever your situation, the chances are, not many schools are able to dedicate one person to social media for 5 days a week. So my advice in that case is always to not spread yourself too thinly. And arguably, even if you do have a dedicated person, this might still be something for you to consider. You don't need to be on all platforms all the time. So if you're worrying about which ones to prioritize, I would recommend choosing 2 to 3 that fit your main target audience and really, really do those justice. If you're doing your social media content justice, it really takes a lot of time. It's very time consuming to create all this content, to write all the captions and check your hashtags. And if you're doing your reporting and analytics and all your research and everything that goes into it, it really does take a lot of time. So you might feel that actually to really show the highest quality content that you possibly can, even if you've got a full-time person on it, you might decide to just choose maybe 3 channels, I should say, 3 social media platforms where your main target audience and maybe your next main target audience are predominantly residing online. And then you can focus on those. So take the time to create the content specifically for those platforms. You can always tell content that's been duplicated. Sometimes it works, but often it needs a bit of tweaking between platforms, at least a little bit of tweaking, if not a lot. If you're spending time, dedicating time on those couple of platforms and you're posting really consistently, coupled with the engagement and the other tips, then you'll really start to make a difference in your metrics, and you'll see that come through aligned to the goal that you'll hopefully have set at the start. So really take the time to make that great content, to make those videos, to think through, what does our audience want to see? Know your audience. What does our audience want to see? What does our secondary audience want to see? Make it engaging, make it attention grabbing, include that call to action. Consider where your target audience is online. Consider if they're using different platforms for different purposes and preferring to see different content types on those different platforms, perhaps. Adapt your content by platform. So it's so easy on some of the scheduling tools to just simply say, yeah, post this on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. That doesn't always translate very nicely onto the actual platforms. So on Instagram, you'll have a load of hashtags, whereas on Facebook, you don't really need more than a couple, if any. And your call to action will be different. You won't be sending them to the bio, you're sending them to click the link, for example. So just those little tweaks, it really pays to make the time to make those tweaks. Plan ahead, plan your content ahead of time. So even if you've only got a couple of days a week for it, schedule out 2 hours. You do your content plan which pieces you're going to do for the next couple of weeks, create them in a batch of content because you'll get into the flow of it and it'll be easier because you're just doing it all at once. Consider getting a scheduling tool so that you can decide when they're going to be posted ahead of time, so you don't have to be worrying about it on the day. And then you're done for the next 2 weeks, or for the most part. And then you can fill in the gaps with some stories content and some of the content that just needs to be posted right now, things that have just happened now, or this fantastic achievement that we really need to share. And that can really save you time by planning ahead and save your sanity on the day as well. So those are my 5 tips. I hope that has been useful. My culminating thought is, and I always say this, that I would like to stop us posting on social media and use the tips we've talked about today to help you start marketing your school on social media. Start leveraging social media as a marketing tool instead of just a tool that we post on. So if you've got any questions, fire them at me, or feel free to go ahead, digest, and then you can contact me on my email there or on Instagram. I'm probably the most speedy to reply on Instagram.